We are studying the Gospel of Mark, the 6th chapter. The Gospel of Mark, the 6th chapter. What's gospel mean?
Good news.
What?
Good news.
Good news. Gospel, the good news. What is the Greek word? Aha! See, Cindy.
Gospel.
The Greek word. The Greek word.
Gospel.
Euangelion. Euangelion, the good message. Euangelion, the gospel according to Mark. All right, what's the rule for ace? Ace is used a lot in the Gospel of Mark.
Extension or limitation of thought or verbal action.
Extension or limitation or thought or verbal action. Okay. What is the most fantastic mode that in Hebrew, I mean not in Hebrew, but in Greek, what tense does Mark use over and over repeatedly? What tense? What tense is he? What? No. Tense. That's mode. Okay.
Everything's immediately.
Imperfect.
Imperfect tense. Thank you, Brother Roger. You got A+. The imperfect tense, why? Because the Hebrew, that is his native language, the Hebrew uses, it's a language of action. Okay, so there we got that. Now, when I was first started preaching, I started preaching in the neighborhood where I lived. Right in the neighborhood within, well, the church was only about 1 mile from my house. And I've run up and down all of those streets over there ever since I was a toddler when I wasn't in Fish Lake Valley. And I was told that you'll never do well in your own neighborhood, in your own fatherland, so to speak. You've got to go someplace else because they know you. They've seen you grow up. But that little old church, it was 7 people when I took it over. Of course, I was young back then. I was 22 or 23 years old. And it grew to about 350 people from nothing. Well, we did everything. And I went and knocked on every door within probably 3 or 4 square miles at least. And of course, we had people coming from out of town also there. But it was a successful ministry. But it's not always easy to do that. Very, very difficult to do that. And that's what we're faced with tonight, is the rejection of Jesus, because this is his own neighborhood. This is his own fatherland. Kai, exelthane, ekethane, kai, erkete, eis, tain, patrida. Autu, kai, akulu, thusen, auto, hoi, matete, autu. And this is the very first verse we're faced with here. Let's look at it. Have you ever heard people say the fatherland? Did your family ever talk about the fatherland, Cindy? Fatherland. My step-grandfather, I went to Luigi's the other day, took Raymond and Carol to Luigi's. And that's my fatherland right there. First of all, I grew up over there. And just within 200 yards of there is where I was, I don't want you to call me a gopher. Somebody to cut up spices and clean dishes and things. Chef's helper over there. And I go in there and this is my family, so to speak. I took him there and we had a good time looking around, remembering things. They are a little younger than I am. So they asked me what happened, what's going on, where all this started, how did it all begin. And I told them how it all began, how that Luigi's now is a very upper crust place for the lawyers and the judges and the mayor and the sheriff and all of the big shots in Bakersfield to go. But it wasn't always that way. That's where the farmers went. My grandfather had a lot to do with it being a big shot place, because the Universal Hotel, which was over there next door to the Pyrenees Bakery, was where all the judges, the lawyers, and the mafia went. They all rubbed elbows together. And they played that bowling ball thing, bocce ball, whatever it's called. And that's where it was. And then when that closed down, they went to Luigi's. And that's how they got that clientele, but it was originally over there. They didn't know anything about this. This was before them. All right, and they went out from there, and they went out. Look at that word, went out. Third person singular, second aorist indicative active, and they went out. Comes from erkamai, and they went out from there. And he comes unto the fatherland. That's what it is, fatherland, the patrida. Patrida, the fatherland. The fatherland, or his hometown. Now, where was Jesus born? In Bethlehem. But that wasn't where his family lived, was it? Now, how long did he stay in Bethlehem, Cindy?
8 years? No, 2 years.
About at least 2 years. Why do we know that he stayed there 2 years? How do we know that? Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say because Herod did that thing with killing all the babies.
Yeah,
And then God, in a dream, told Joseph to take his family down.
the slaughter of the innocents. That's what it's called, the slaughter of the innocents. What happened as the Magi, and our word magistrate comes from them, that's what we call the Magi. Now, there could have been 300 of them. There could have been 3, or I don't know how many there were. Nor there's anyone else now. But the tradition says that 3 of them, whether it was 30 or 3 or whatever it was, but they were Magi. They were rulers from the east. And they came there to worship Jesus because they knew it was time for him to be born, because of what book? The book of Daniel. They knew it was time for him to be born. And so in the stars they said, it's time for him to be born. And so they went there, and they went to Jerusalem because that's where the king is supposed to be born, because that is the palace city. That's the head city. The capital city of Israel is Jerusalem. And of course, Satan had been busy, hadn't he? Satan had been very busy, and instead of having Joseph on the throne, which was Jesus' earthly father, though he wasn't his literal father, Joseph should have been on the throne, the king of Israel. But when Antony and Cleopatra were on the thrones, basically, they got involved with the state of Israel, and they put Herod the Great on the throne instead of Joseph. They circumcised the traditional ancestral king, and they put Herod on there. Herod was very aggressive, wanting to keep his territory, and he had a lot of it. He made Jerusalem into a city like Rome. They had a hippodrome. What's a hippodrome? Hippodrome. That's Greek.
That's where they have the races.
They had a horse race station.
The chariot races. Ben-Hur.
A coliseum. They had a coliseum and all that in Jerusalem. And he had the Antonio Forest, named after Antony, the Caesar, the ruler of the Roman Empire. And he was all set up. Well, you know, he was a very vicious character. Killed a lot of people in his life for politics. And they came, the Magi came, and asked, where is the king? Because they expected he would be there, where the palace is. And he said, what king? Oh, the king of the Jews. So Herod called in the scribes and the priests, and they said, where's the king supposed to be born? Where's he going to be born? And they said, we don't know. What'd they say? Bethlehem. Because the Old Testament prophecy said he was born in Bethlehem. Do you think that the Jews knew about his birth? Did the Sadducees and the scribes and the Pharisees know that he was born? Absolutely. It wasn't no mystery. And so they called him in. They said, Bethlehem. They would say, well, you go over there, and if you find him, or when you find him, come back and tell me so I can go worship him also. He's going to have him killed. So, in history, historical documents tell us about this. One, we have a letter from the Arco volume, which is a letter from Herod the Great to Caesar, telling him why he killed the people there, all the little children. And how old were the children? 2 years old and under. So he was probably there at least 2 years, or somewhere around the neighborhood of 2 years. And then Gabriel told Joseph to go to Egypt, because the Bible also said, I shall call my son out of Egypt. Another prophecy. So he went down there. Now, how long he stayed down in Egypt, we do not know. But we find out later on that he's up there in Nazareth. And he was a root out of dry ground because the word Nazareth. That's where he would be raised, and that's where he would go to synagogue and all of that. And in the synagogue, he would have a seat for his family. The synagogue, you don't go to synagogues like going to church, but now at Valley Baptist Church, I bought one of those pews that they used to have. They didn't get my permission to get rid of it. But I bought one, $1,500 that I paid for that chair. Now, in the synagogues, you have to buy your bench or your chair. This goes way back yonder. And when did the synagogue worship begin? When did it begin? Cindy?
After,
Where?
I'm sorry, after the temple was destroyed.
After the temple was destroyed in the Babylonian captivity and wherever they were, they said, if you have how many people, you can start a synagogue? 10 people.
10 men. Has to be men.
10 men. And the boys that basically at 12 years old or so were considered men because they wanted to get the boys married as soon as they could so they would not have lust and do something bad. And so a boy at 12 years old, if they could get 10 people there, then they could have a synagogue. And Jesus superseded that synagogue business, didn't he? He said, you can have a church what? Where there are 2 or 3 gathered together in my authority as a church. As a church. Now, people use that out of context. Where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my authority, I will be with them. Not just 2 or 3 people. But 2 or 3 people as a church. So, from 10 to 2 or 3. And he went out from there, and he comes into the Fatherland, his father city of him, belonging to him. Look at that word alto there. Alto, that's the end of the singular masculine third person pronoun. And Kai is always on page 208. You can write that down below that. It's always on page 208. And by the word ace is on page 119. I can tell you that off the top of my head because I've only written that about 20 or 30,000 times. And they follow. Now this word, it comes from akul theo. What does that word mean? Akul thusim. And they follow. Third person plural, present indicative active. They follow. They follow listening. As he walks and speaks, they follow the sound of him. That's what it really means. They follow the sound of him, and they follow the sound of him as disciples. They're listening. They're hearers. They follow him. Dative, singular, masculine, third person pronoun. How to. The mathete. Now it tells us what's mathete. What does mathete mean, Brother Roger?
Lifelong or habitual learner.
Habitual learner. The habitual learners of him. Now, if you want to cross-reference this, Matthew 13:53 through 58, and Luke 14:16 through 30, you'll go read some more of the story. Now, remember also about the Gospel of Mark. The Gospel of Mark is what we call what? The abbreviated Reader's Digest form of the Gospel. Not everything that happened does Mark write down, but the most important things he writes down. 6 and verse 2. Kai gen nomeno sabato erxato didaskain en te synagoges. synagogue, that is. Kai, hoi, poloi, akuontes, ex pleisonton. Legontes, pothem, tuto, tauta, kai, tis, he, sophia. He, dothesa, tuto, kai, he, dynames, tute, dia, ton, kateron, autu, geno, menai. Now, I want you to see the Hebrew tenses in this. The action. And having come. Genitive singular masculine. Second, aorist participle middle voice. Tell me about this, Sharon. How do we translate this?
Well,
It means to come. Get am I?
yeah, having come, but for himself.
All right. He led himself. All right. And having come for himself of Sabbath. Now, what about this word Sabbaton? What does Sabbaton mean? You remember what Sabbaton means, Cindy? Huh? You got that one? Sabbaton. What does Sabbaton mean? A complete week, a completion. It means a finish. Now, how many Sabbaths could you have in a week?
As many as you want.
As many as you want. As many as there's room for. And sometimes, when Jesus, the week of his crucifixion, there were how many Sabbaths that week? 3 Sabbaths that week. 3 Sabbaths that week. Many of these Sabbath worshipers don't realize this. 3 Sabbaths that week. A Sabbath. Of the Sabbath, of the completion, of the end. Now, at the end of the week, they would always come, wouldn't they? And what is the Sabbath? When is the Sabbath, Pamela? What is it? Oh, yeah. When is the Sabbath? When is it? All right, when does Saturday begin? When does Saturday begin?
Friday evening.
Friday evening at 6 o'clock, Saturday begins. The Sabbath begins. Because the Jews always started the day in the evening, not in the morning. We begin a day in the morning at 12 midnight. That's when the day begins with us, but the day begins with them at 6 p.m. On Friday evening, that's when the Sabbath begins. So the Sabbath would begin at 6 p.m. Friday evening. You can go down on any of the Jewish hawk shops that you have anyplace else. I want to tell you something. This is a secret. You're listening? If you buy, see, I bought this Rolex watch from a Jewish hawk shop. I did. It's a $4,000 Rolex, and I gave $400 for it. I bought it on Friday, and you go there in the afternoon on Friday, and they want to make a sale. This is it. This is mindset. Okay, you listening? If you want to really get a good deal at a Jewish hawk shop, go at Friday about 3 o'clock, 2 or 3 o'clock, and they'll be in a hurry to get you straightened out and get out of there. They will. You know that, Roger?
No,
You did not know that.
Makes sense.
They want to make that last sale of the day. And that's where you want to get. If you got something, if you go buy a hawk shop, just go looking around there, and then go back on Friday. And if the object is still there, and you really want this object, you began dealing with them about 2 or 3 o'clock. And they want to get that sale before the Sabbath. This is the last money they're going to make that day. And they want to make that sale. And you will get a better deal. Mark my words. You know who told me that? A Jewish guy. A Jewish guy told me that. Actually, he was raised by Jewish people. And they were in the hawk shop business. So I got inside information. You know what's like inside information on horse races and all that? Well, that's inside information on these Jewish hawk shops. And a hawk shop, why do they have hawk shops?
Are we going all the way back to usury?
Go all the way back, way back, in the Dark Ages, when the Jews could not open banks. So a hawk shop is a bank with real collateral. That's what it is. All right, and having come of Sabbath, he started, ex auto, for himself. Look at that, third person singular, first aorist, indicative active, indicative middle voice, that is, to teach, didaskane, comes from didaskalo, and that means to instruct and to teach. In the synagogue, in te synagoge. Now, had he done this before? In other places it said, as was his what? Habit. All right, as was his habit. In the synagogue, and the ones, look at that word hoi there. Hoi describes akuontes. Hoi akuontes. Now, akuontes is not the same gender or declension as the hoi is there. So hoi is nominative plural masculine. Akuontes is nominative plural masculine. But the endings are a little bit different. See that? That's because they're from a different declension. But the there has a practical substantive with it. What is that practical substantive? The ones. So you can write down the ones. Put down there ones. And then put down their PS underneath there, not postscript, but practical substantive. And the ones, many. Look at that word hoi there, or paloi there. Paloi agrees with the definite article, doesn't it? But we know that the ones hearing, the many hearing there is nominative plural masculine present participle active. So all three of these are describing those guys. The ones, many hearing. And it says, ex a pele santo. Ex a pele santo, it means that's third person plural, imperfect, indicative, passive. Passive voice. What's passive voice mean there? You remember that? What that means, Pamela? Passive.
I don't know before.
No, passive. Passive. Sharon?
No, it's not
Passive voice.
active.
Passive means
It is being done to you.
it's been done to somebody. Something's being done to you. Passive voice, something's being done to you. So let's try to translate that correctly. And what it actually means is to absolutely astonish and to strike somebody out of their mind. They kept on being struck out of their senses. They were amazed, astonished, in shock. They kept on being shocked. Saying, legontes, that's nominative plural masculine present participle active, saying, and they kept on doing this. Because saying there is nominative plural masculine present participle, and a participle is a what thing? One of them continuing things. From where? This is a little adverb there. From where this one, these things, where's all this coming from? Where is this one? These two demonstrative pronouns here. Where does this one and these things? This one there is Jesus, and these things are miracles and astounding statements that came from this man. I have preached in the past to some audiences when I get up and start speaking, and I go into deep stuff, sometimes, which I do. And they'll get up and says, boy, I never heard anybody say so much in 30 minutes in my life. Or, boy, what a lot of information. I couldn't catch it all. I'm still stunned by the information that you have. Where are these things? And tis he Sophia. And what wisdom! And what wisdom having been given to this one. Look at that. What wisdom, the wisdom having been given. Ho dothesa. That's first aorist, participle passive, nominative, singular, feminine. This wisdom, that's feminine, having been given to this one, and this one is Jesus right there. That's a little demonstrative pronoun. Dative, singular, masculine. And the powerful works. The powerful works. The dynamite power. We get the word dynamis there. We get the word dynamite from that. Dynamite is so powerful that they didn't know what to say, so they called it from a Greek word, dynamis. Supernatural power. Supernatural power. People had black powder for a long time. Sulfur and saltpeter mixture, and it goes boom. You can take it and put it in a barrel and stick something in it and just strike a match to it, or whatever you do, a flint or a cap, and it'll go kaboom. But the same amount of dynamite will go kaboom and blow things up real big, because it's got nitroglycerin in it. Most of your gunpowder today has nitroglycerin in it. Did you know that? Nitroglycerin. Nitroglycerin is a very powerful substance. Dynamis. Dynamis. Powerful works such as through the hands of him having come to be for themselves. This man is doing things that are just unbelievable. He is saying words that are astonishing us and doing deeds that are supernatural. Where did this come from? How's this happening? Now, what did the Jews say about it? The unbelieving Jews.
He learned it all from the bad guys in Egypt.
He learned it all from the black magic in Egypt. They were doing all this, the black magic. It's all black magic. Have you ever watched The Magician? Have you ever watched A Magician? There was one over there in Las Vegas for a while. They had him on television. I couldn't ever stand to go in those casinos over there. There was a lot of smoke for one reason, and I just didn't like the company and too many people. But I did watch it. He would make lions disappear. That one guy, I can't even remember his name, he's going to make a ship disappear. Yeah. All of this, these are magicians. And it's sleight of hand is what it is. It's sleight of hand and tricks. But Jesus was no trickster. But Egypt was full of them. And they said this is where he got, because why? He went down to Egypt. Did they know he went to Egypt? Did they know where he was born? Did they know where he went? Did they know where he came back to? Now, if you really want to find out what happened about all this, read the Arco volume where they interviewed Joseph and all of his family and friends. The Sanhedrin did. Go and look. Now, what did Joseph think about Jesus? Remember what it said in there?
He didn't have his mind on carpentry.
He didn't have his mind on work at all. He was just no good. He was never going to make a good stonemason at all. Just wasn't. Wasn't going to do it. He didn't have his mind on his work at all. He was always chasing theological rabbits. Now listen to what it says in this verse. Uk, hutos, estin, ho tekton, ho huios, tes marias, kai adelphos, ikabu, kai, oses, ostos, oestos, kai, uda, kai simonos, kai uk estin, he adelphe, autu, heyday, pros, hemas, kai, escon lalizonta, in auto. Now from this we find out the names of some of his brothers, the word adelphos there. Let's look at it. Not this one is the stonemason. The word ho-tekton there, it means more likely stonemason. We got our word technology from that. Tectone, technology. He was probably it meant an artificer of some sort, like to carve stones. Maybe even carving statues and things, carving pillars, whatever. Stonemason. Back down in Egypt, when he went down into Egypt, guess what? What do they do down in Egypt?
They have a lot of buildings.
They make buildings, don't they? Make stone buildings. So he would be right at home down there, wouldn't he? Did Jesus use ever any carpenter terms? No. What terms did he use?
Well, that's
Stonemason terms.
But the log in your eye and that one.
That splinter.
Splinter.
Yeah. That was a hyperbole.
Yeah.
But this, what?
Cornerstone.
Yeah.
Cornerstones, foundation. Build a house. You build it on a foundation. Did they build houses out of wood back then? No.
And
They
most
were
of
all
the
built
houses
out of
there, they're
stone.
built out of wood now. They're all built of stone.
Everybody thinks that Jesus is carrying a hammer and nails, 16 penny nails, and building houses and things like that, but that's hearsay. He was a stonemason, most probably. This one is the stonemason, the son, the wheels, the heir. Was he the heir of Joseph? He wasn't the son, but he was the heir of Joseph, wasn't he? And Joseph should have been the king of Israel. Did they know that?
They must have.
All right. I want two different gospels. I want you to tell me which gospel gives the lineage of Jesus as Joseph's lineage. Matthew. Okay, which gospel gives the lineage of Mary? Okay, Luke. Matthew looks at Jesus as the king of Israel. Luke looks at Jesus as what? The son of mankind. See? There we have it. The Bible is such a fantastic book. It is a fantastic book. The Bible is so complicated and so intricate in its woven details that no man could have ever imagined it. No man, especially not 40-plus writers that wrote it. This is a lot of information passed over 2,000 years to people. And for all of them to get everything just right, when the writers were writing, they didn't always even know what they were writing, did they? Did they understand everything they wrote about? Remember that Ethiopian eunuch there on the road, and Philip, the deacon, is caught up and put over there by him, and he was reading Isaiah, and he said, "Do you understand what you read?" And he said, "How can I, except somebody explain this?" And so he told him about the gospel and about Jesus and being crucified and buried and raised again. And he said, "There's water over there. What prevents me from being baptized?" So they went over there and dipped him. There's enough water to dip him, too. I've been there, right at that place. All the early churches were built for what reason? Why were the early churches built? The first early church buildings, edifices. You remember why? Why were they built?
Constantine's mom went over there and marked places where she...
She went over there and marked places where all this was supposed to happen, but why were the first church buildings, edifices, built? Why were they built? Maryland. Why were the first church buildings built?
Oh, baptismals.
Baptismal. They had to have a baptismal pond in every one of them, and sometimes it was not easy to get something big enough to dip somebody in, so that's why they were first built, and so they'd have enough water where they could baptize people. Is this not the one, the son, the heir of the carpenter and of Mary, Marias? What does Mary mean? What? Bitter. Okay. What does Joseph mean? Joseph.
Multiplying or
It means to be blessed or multiply or whatever. Joseph. Be fruitful. Joseph and Mary and the brothers and the brother of James. He's the brother of James. Now, what does this adelphos mean? Cindy, you remember what adelphos means? From the same womb. Who was their mother? Mary. These are all Mary's kids. Now, the Catholic Church will swear up and down. Now, they didn't do this in the beginning. They just kind of accumulated this information and this doctrine of Mariolatry. If you look back up here, where was Mariolatry? Where did the doctrine of Mariolatry begin? Look at the map. Where did it begin?
1100 and something.
400 something A.D. So they weren't worshiping Mary for the first 300 years. So here in the 400s, we have Mariolatry. They began to worship Mary. Now, in the beginning, they didn't say Mary was sinless, did they? Did they? No. But now, we've got a sinless Mary. Not only is she sinless, she is a miraculous birth. She is of miraculous birth. The Bible didn't say that, did it? No. Not only that, but she never sins. She's sinless. And she has no other children besides Jesus. And what else? That she does not die, but she's taken up into heaven. What we call the Immaculate Conception, and all of this, all were doctrines many, many years later. But here, what?
Crowned Queen of Heaven.
Oh, she is the Queen of
Because I've
Heaven,
seen
and
these
she is the
brass doors.
intercessor for all mankind.
Yeah, because in Nazareth they have the big, huge new church there. They have these bronze doors, and they have all that. And up to, where was that in the Bible?
Yes. You can go see the star where he was born right there at that spot.
There.
And that probably is one of the most valid places, sites of that. But Mary was a woman. Mary was a woman just like you. Mary sinned and all of that, and Mary had to be saved just like you do. And she had to look to her Son as Savior, not to herself as intercessor. She did not have that. She now is intercessor. This is what we call an evolution of theology. And Mary and the brothers from the same womb, Jacob and Jose, or Joseph, all right, and Judas. What book did Judas write?
Jude.
The book of Jude. Judah is his name. Judas and Judah, or Jude, is all the same word. Judah means Judas, or Judah, which means praise to Jude. Praise Jehovah. And Judas and Simon. Simon. All of these were his brothers. So he has 1, 2, 3, at least 4 brothers. So that woman had at least, so far, she's had 5 kids. 5 times she's bared children so far. Is that valid or not?
Looks like
What's it say? These are all from the same womb. That's what it says, from the same. Adelphos means from the same womb. Now she has Jesus, she has James, Joseph, Judah, and Simon. 5 kids, but she's not finished. And not is the sisters. How many, the word sisters there, how many sisters does he have to have? At least 2. At least 2 sisters. It doesn't name them because women are not very important, are they? Just not important. So we don't name them because it doesn't name them, but we know he had sisters. And the sisters of him, here they are, standing here toward us. And they kept on being offended, scandalized.
That's why they're not in there. That's why they're not mentioned. Gossipers.
Scandalized, shocked, offended in him. These people kept on being offended. Not only that, but his family was a little upset too, wasn't they? Jesus' family weren't going along with all this, by the way. We read the other Gospels, Matthew the 13th chapter, and different places where we read the other Gospels where all this took place, and we'll find out that his family said, hey, they went to them and said, go get him, he's nuts. Go get the county clerk and declare him crazy, insane. He's insane. He's saying he's God. And you know he isn't. Did any of his brothers or sisters, did any of them believe before the crucifixion and the resurrection? No. Later on, we have James and we have Judah. James and Judah both died as witnesses, as martyrs. Kai, Eligen, Altois, Ho Jesus, Hote uk Eston, Prophetes, Atimos, me en te, Patrida, Autu, Kai en tois, Sina, Singe nusen. Autu, Kai en te, Oika, Autu. And he kept on saying to them, the Jesus. Now he stated this over and over and over again. How many times have I told you what ace means? How many times have I quoted John 1 and 1 and 1:14 and 1:18 to you? I'm not the only one that repeats myself. Jesus did too. Over and over and over again. Why? If you say it enough, they'll learn it. They'll be able to say it before you're saying it. They'll start being able to say it with you. And that's what he was doing. And Jesus kept on saying to them, the Jesus, because not is a prophet. This is what I started out with, remember? He is dishonored. A prophet is dishonored except in his native city, in his fatherland of him. And in look at that word, Siganusen. Siganusen, that's his brothers and sisters. Seen means together, generated. They were generated by the same woman and same man. His generation, his immediate family, the relatives of him, and in the house, the home of him. So they're not going to have honor. He's not going to have honor there in Nazareth, is he? No. Been a long time since he's been over there to Bethlehem, and right over there by Bethany. What was very important in Bethany? This is Jesus. What?
Lazarus and
Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. That was their home, and they were very wealthy people. And they were lifetime friends of Jesus. Lifetime friends. And the interview by the Sanhedrin included them. Let me just ad-lib this just a little bit by way of parenthesis. They asked Mary and Martha about Jesus. What about him? He said, our brother loves him. Our brother loves him. They take off into the desert and the uninhabitable areas, and my brother Lazarus is never afraid being with him out there. And what was out there? Hyenas, wolves, bears, and lions. And he said he always feels safe with Jesus. Always feels safe with Jesus wherever he goes. If you go in my radio room in there, you look over there, and you'll see my friend, Photios Kyriakopoulos. He was a Greek guy, a restaurateur, and I was his hunting guide. And I would go up in the mountains. We went up in the Greenhorn Mountains. We went up here on the Tejon Ranch, and he hunted all over with me, I think Breckenridge at times. And we were all over Greenhorn, and there's a lot of mountains up there, all down in those things, all over the top. And sometimes I would get broke down. The car would quit. I'd just get out and fix it. Just fix the thing. I'd get out there while he was hunting. I'd change the spark plugs, put new points in the thing, or whatever. I might even change the oil in the thing. Whatever I was going to do, I'd do it. And he'd come back and he'd, wow. One time the shifter fell off. The four-wheel drive. I got underneath the thing. I drove it over the top of a gully, a ravine type thing, a wash. I just went underneath there because it was like it was on jack stands. I got underneath the thing and fixed it. When he went to Africa, he was wealthy. He was a multimillionaire. When he went to Africa, he says, I want you to be my guide in Africa. I'll pay your way. I said, Fody, I'm not African. I'm Indian. Now, all over this here, I used to teach him about the animals, what the animals were thinking, and everything else. A couple other Indians went down to his house with me one time, my wife and her son. And he looked at them and he said, are you Indians? Yeah, are you Indian like Jim? Can you smell the deer in the woods? Can you tell me what they're thinking? And all this kind of stuff. Like that. And they were a little shocked. Look at him. Oh, no. You're not Indians. He's Indian. He said, when I went to Africa, I wanted him to go, but he wouldn't go. He told me to get me an African. I said, go over there and get you one of them great white hunters or something over there. Go out there in the woods with you. Well, he went to Africa and he did that. But when he came back, he brought some lion claws. He said, I want you to make a necklace out of those lion claws for me. Now let's go on 6 and 5. Kai uk edenato eke poiese udemion dinamin a me Holy Ghost arostos epithes tas keros ether repusen. And not he was able. Not he kept on being able. Look at that word, third person singular, imperfect, indicative, active. What caused him not being able to do this? The hearers and the seers. There, in that place. As an adverb of place. To do. First aorist, infinitive, active, to do almost anything, nothing at all. Udamia. You ever heard me say that before? Udamia? It means nothing. Nothing else. Udamia. Nothing. Hardly at all. Dynamin. Powerful. Powerful works. If not, it means only a few, a small amount. Olikos. That means a little bit. A little bit, sick ones. Arostos. Arostos comes from a and runami. A and runami. It means not well. They were not well. And he laid upon the hands of him and he healed them. Third person singular, first aorist, indicative, active. What kind of healing was that, Cindy? What kind of healing was that? He healed them. Ethera pusen. Third person singular, first aorist, indicative, active. What kind of healing was it? Okay, what was it? What kind of healing, Sharon? First aorist tells you what? It's instantaneous. Boom. Pow. Right now. It wasn't gradual. They were healed. They didn't get better. They were healed. Now, he did a few things, but very little. Okay, 6 and verse 6. 6 and 6.
Is that because of their lack of faith? Or
they didn't want to listen. You can do all you want to. You can get up and preach all you want to, but if people have their fingers in their ears, what good is it going to do? They had preconceived ideas of who he was, and they would not believe. They would not believe. They would not believe. They would not. How about those people that he healed? The few. They believed. Were there some that believed? Yeah. But not much influence did he have in that place. 6 and verse 6. Kai ithamasen dia tain apistion altu. Kai peregan tas komas kuklo didasko. And he was astonished. because of the what? The unbelief of them. He was astonished. Jesus was astonished because of the unbelief of them. I have done all these things, and they will not believe. They will not believe. And he kept on going around the villages, the komas, the villages. Villages. What is a village? What is a village?
Small.
Small area, Galilee. Galilee is a circle, isn't it? Galilee is a circle. That means circle. So he went around all of their healing. In a circle, Kuklo. We had a superintendent over there and a principal over here at Lakeside School one time. His name was Kuklos, and he was Greek. I said, you know what your name means? He said, no. I said, it means circle. It means circle. Kuklos. In a circle. Teaching. Nominative, singular, masculine, present, participle, active. Teaching. Now we come to a very, very, very astounding part of the Bible. Jesus not only has power over sickness, over the natural forces. We studied this morning, we studied about God's preservation, election and preservation. And we talked about the different theories of preservation. One of the theories of preservation is that God created the universe in self-parroting way so it would take care of itself forever. Is that true? No, it's not.
I know it's.
He has to hold it in place. It doesn't. It's not finished, and it doesn't create itself and keep on working every day. God sustains it, Colossians 1, Ephesians 1, Ephesians 6, John the 1st chapter. Well, Jesus not only had power over, authority over natural forces and over diseases, but he had the ability to give power to others, which no one had ever done. This is something no one has ever done before. No one has ever done it before. How many of you ever seen an ordination? A real old-time ordination. Where you get up there and what you do is you test the candidates for ordination. When I was ordained, there were two hosts. The other guy did a lot better than I did. A lot better than I did. He did a lot better. Because you still couldn't pry a word out of me at that time. This is a long time ago. And he was doing real well. You can hear it. If you go onto the website, you can listen to the old-time ordination of Jim Phillips and Doug McLaughlin. He did a lot better than I did. He could talk. I had a lot of trouble speaking up and talking at that time. The Lord has done miracles with me. Anyway, they would, you go through all of this. And then local churches ordain ministers. Local churches. Now, in many circles, in religious circles, it is bishops, archbishops, or whatever that ordain people. But in the early New Testament churches, the churches did it. And after they questioned me and everything, they figured I was okay to be ordained as a minister and pastor a church. They had us go down and sit down at the altar in front of the church, and all of the presbytery is what they call it, the elders, all of those that were ordained, deacons and pastors and everything that came all over the place from everywhere to do this. They work with that local church. The other elders do. But the church ordains them. The church ordains the people. So they call the elders in, and they go down there, and they put their hands on you, sometimes on their head or whatever, laying hands on you. This is what you call the laying on the hands. And I'm going to tell you something. In that laying on the hands, there is something that's passed on. That's all I can say. It means something. It means more than just putting your hands on somebody. More than just putting your hands on somebody. It is an honor to be ordained, and it is a very much honor to lay hands on people. Paul the Apostle said, I laid hands on very few people. You know what I'm talking about? Fighting. He's talking about ordaining people. ordaining people. In all reality, I have laid hands on very few people. I have laid hands on people, but on very few people. Because I wanted to make sure what I was doing. Because that is a very sacred thing to do. All right, now, Jesus is going to give power to others to do things. And he's going to give power to these people, these individuals. Not only is he going to do that, he's going to ordain 12 of them. And they're what? Apostles. Now, what was apostle? That's an old word, isn't it? Didn't start with Jesus, did it? Didn't start with him. Didn't begin with Jesus. The word ecclesia didn't begin with Jesus. That's church. One is called out. And the word apostle didn't begin with Jesus. So what does the word apostolos mean? Sent out with divine or royal authority. Okay. Ecclesia. What's the word ecclesia mean? One's called out. But what were the ecclesias in existence when Jesus? How about 500 years before Jesus? Were the ecclesias in existence? It was something that he used in his theological terms that related to that. In him we live and move and have our existence. Sharon, where'd that come from?
That was from some great poet.
Two poets.
Way back.
One of them came from Tarsus and one of them came from Athens. Two poets. And they lived, and those were very common. One of them was, and they all were praising Zeus. But Paul used those terms to get their attention. Hey, you remember this term? In him we live, move, and have our existence? Yeah. They're talking about Jesus. We're not talking about Zeus. We're talking about Jesus now. Let's look and see what it says here. Kai, pros kalete, tos, dodeca, kai, exato, autus, apostolane, dio, kai, edudu, altes, exousion, tone, pneumaton, tone, akarthon. Let's see if we have another part here. That's it. All right. And he calls toward himself. Third person singular, present, indicative, middle voice. He calls for himself the dodeca, the 210. That's what it means there, 210. That's the way Hebrew is, isn't it, too, Roger? 210. 210 means 12. And he began for himself them to send forth. Apostolane. Look at that. To send forth what? That word means what? To send forth with divine or royal authority with a lot of power. Two. And he kept on giving, third person singular, perfect, indicative, active, autois, to them, exousia. What's exousia mean, Cindy? Exousia. Huh?
Divine authority?
What?
Divine authority?
What's it literally mean? What's it mean, Sharon?
It's the highest.
No limits. No limits. Out of any limits. No limits. Unlimited authority. Of the, or over the pneumaton. Pneumaton, what is this? What kind of spirits are these? Remember,
Nasty ones.
nasty ones, bad. These are evil spirits, which are called demons. The spirits here are demon spirits. We have spirits that are ministering spirits of God. And if you look up here, just imagine a pie with three pieces, cut in three ways. And one of them is material, and one of them is spiritual, and one of them is informational realm. Now, there are three realms of angels and three realms of spirits. Over the mental realm, informational realm, over the spiritual realm, and over the material realm. The one over the material realm was Lucifer. That's the one that fell. But not all of his spirits went with him, and not all of his angels went with him. He probably, most theologians believe that he took about 1/3 of each one of these. 1/3 out of the material realm, 1/3 out of the informational realm, 1/3 out of the spiritual realm, which are the most powerful of all demons and spirits. And many of them, after they fell, are locked up in the bottomless pit today. Even today. Okay? He calls the 12 of them to send forth two by two, and now this is where your Jehovah's Witnesses and this is where your Mormons get this idea. All right? And he continued to give them unlimited authority over spirits of the unclean, the foul, the impure spirits. Matthew 10, 1 through 5 and 13, and Luke 9, 1 through 6. So now he's sending out this limited commission, isn't he? And this limited commission, he's given them power over all of these. All of these evil spirits. Didn't have to have power over the other ones, did they? They were working with him. But these are demon spirits. All right, you got any questions thus far? You ready to quit? You ready to quit? I don't know how long we've been going. Let me look over here and find out. Yeah, we've been going an hour, so that's about enough, I guess. So we went through 6, 1 through 5.
7.
What is it?
1 through 7.
6, 1 through 7? Oh, yes. I've turned 2 pages. 6, 1 through 7. Well, I'll tell you what, I've been writing down dates in this book for a long time, since 1972, 71. That's a long time ago. Been teaching Greek and Hebrew for a long, long spell. Did you learn something today? Did you learn something? That's the most important thing. Did you get something? Did you get something to stick underneath your hat and keep there and remember? All right. Any questions at all? Any interrogatio? No? All right. Sharon, would you dismiss us in prayer, please?
Father, we just thank you for the opportunity we've just had to learn the word in Greek and to learn the concepts and learn the full breadth of what you're trying to tell us. We thank you for that. We thank you for just the opportunity, the continuing opportunity that we have, and because it is precious. And Lord, I just ask that you help us to remember, to retain, and to digest and apply what we have learned. In your holy name.